Hi guys, Gilly Hunt here with a set of 4 note cards that I thought were particularly appropriate at this time of the year. They're lovely to send after Christmas as thank you cards, and they're also little ways of saying hello to somebody when it's dark and wintry and people need a little bit of a cheer up. So I thought these were rather pretty. They've been used using an embossing technique to give you this really rather nice sort of slightly antiqued look to the card. So this is what we're using. We're using some soft seafoam cardstock, and this is 4 and 3/4 inches by 3 1/4 inches. We're also going to need a little scrap of vellum, which we're going to use to wrap along here. So I'll need a little piece of that. So I won't need the whole piece, but just a little scrap to wrap around. So it needs to be longer and about a centimetre wide. Okay, but I'm going to cut that after I've stamped it, and I'll tell you why when we get to that point. You'll also need the Forever Blossoms if you're going to use the same image as me, but you need a floral element. Okay, and I've also then chosen, because I particularly didn't want the lovely text on this one, because they're much more about friendship and about weddings. They're suitable for weddings and things. I wanted something slightly different, so I've chosen the Butterfly Gala to choose all my little notes from, but it's up to you. You can choose your own little greetings. I particularly like these for thank yous. The Butterfly Gala ones are just nice for that. I've also got 4 blenders, Stampin' Blends, which I've used on these. But again, you could use watercolour, you could use your own crayons, you could use pastels, you could use paints. I like these because they just add that vintage look. And I've used dark petal pink, I've used light petal pink, I've used light calypso coral and light old olive. But as I say, you can choose your own colouring. I just think this is a particularly pretty pastel blend to go with the soft seafoam. Okay, and I've also used the Versamark ink and some gold embossing powders, which comes in a little pot like this of lovely powders. And I'll show you those in a moment. So here we go. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to remove this because it will get mucky, but this is where we're going, and we'll see if we get there at the end. I'm going to pop down a little bit of grid paper because I don't want to get my background all munched up. Here we go. So we're going to take this lovely floral piece from that Forever Blossoms, and this is the Forever Blossom itself, and we're going to just use the Memento ink, but any black ink. If you're going to use blends, it's got to be a dye-based ink because then it won't smudge and smear. Okay, so any dye-based ink, but Memento is the one I've chosen for this job. And I'm going to just place this at the side, and because this is quite a big piece, what I am going to do is just spend a little time. I'm not pushing hard, but I am just ensuring that there's pressure all the way across the stamp, because sometimes if you just press it once, you might just miss a corner or it might not take. I'm not pressing hard, I'm just making sure every little piece has made contact. There we go. And this is a photoreal, really beautiful piece. Now it's up to you. You can colour this now or you can do the edging first, but I quite like to colour it first. It also means that if I make a mess of the colouring, then I can scrap it, I can start again. So I have used the light petal pink first, and when I am using Stampin' Blends, I always do the lightest colour first. Okay. And I'm going to work quite fast across because I don't want it to dry. So I've got that nice and wet. And now I'm going to bring in the darker colour and just put a few little low lights or shadows. and I'm being guided by the actual drawing itself. This is the lovely thing with the drawing. The drawing actually has some lowlights already marked into it. Okay, and you'll notice that I'm doing one petal at a time. So here, look, there's the, you can see where they've put some shading. That's where you use your dark. Where they've darkened it, that's where you use your darker one. Okay, same again. And we're not really using them as blender pens because we're not going back over and blending them. We're just allowing them to sort of mix and blend a bit as we're going along, that's all. So I'm not doing it in a traditional colourist way that you would use a blender. But I am doing it quite, I think what I would call quite scrappily. I'm just sort of smudging and swishing because I really don't want it to be too precise. I want there to be slight fades and darks and lights. Now I'm going to bring in the Calypso Coral and I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of extra colour into the centres of the big ones. Almost like radiating like a sunshine, and again not a huge amount. And then I'm going to look for the back petal, so it's that one, and it's going to be that one and that one. The back petal, the one that's turned around at the back, because that's where the shadows will be. And then I'm just going to use some light old olive, just to finish my leaves. And I'm not going to give the leaves shade particularly. I'm going to let the actual ink work from the stamp suggest the shadows and the shade on these. Okay, and I'm not going to be too worried about every single bit of those. Okay. So there's my image coloured in. Sketchily though it is, but that adds to that nice vintage look. Now I'm going to create the nice vintage edge, which is that little gold piece around the edge. So I'm going to bring in my gold powder, which I've now, so from the little pot that it's in, I usually put them into these sort of trays. It just makes it easier for me to work with, particularly if you're doing an edge, because you want to be able to dip the edge itself. Okay, I'm going to bring in the Versamark and we're going to get started. And all I'm going to do with the Versamark is touch it, and I do mean touch it, just gently to the edges of my card. So I'm not really sort of doing much other than just touching the edge, and I'm giving it a very slight drag. Okay, I'm just going to go over it twice because there might be little areas where it didn't quite catch. Okay, pop that lid on because we want to keep that nice and lush. And all I'm going to do is dip my card each corner, each side into my tray. I'm going to give it a little flick with my finger in the middle to get any loose powder out of the way. It's also possible, if you've got any loose powder in the middle, just to give it a wipe with a very nice soft brush. Soft paintbrush is just a soft hair paintbrush, and then give it another flick. So all those little pieces will have gone out the way. Okay, and I'm going to bring in my heat tool. And the one thing you want to do is warm the heat tool up, because you really want this to happen quickly. You want the melting to happen quickly. The reason for that is that the quicker it melts, the less time you have to have the heat on the card. Now, as you heat up the card, it will curl and it will move because the fibres in the paper get heated up and they shrink. So the less time you have, the less shrinkage you have, the less buckled your card will be. So get your heat gun really nice and hot first before you start, okay? By just running it on its own. Now, I haven't run this for very long, and I don't want to today because obviously I don't want to be shouting over the top of it for a film. So if it was me, I would run it for about twice as long as I'm going to. So here we go. Let's just allow it. I'm just putting it into the air just to warm itself up. And I do know that when I do my Christmas cards and things like that, if I'm doing a batch, the ones at the end of the batch are always nicer because they're always crisper, the paper's always flatter, because the heat gun itself has warmed up. But also, don't panic if you run your gun for too long, it may cut out. There is an automatic cutout in most modern heat tools. Definitely there is in the Stampin' Up ones, which means that if it overheats, it will cut out. So don't panic if it stops working. Just leave it to one side, let it cool down, and maybe don't leave it quite so long. So I think that's had a good length of time, so I'm now going to direct it down onto the page. And you'll notice that I'm not moving it madly from side to side, I'm just letting it heat up one area at a time, get that melted. Can you see that? That's, if I show you, oops, let me just put the gun to one side. Can you see that? It's hard to show you on the camera. Oh, there we go. You can see where it's shiny, that's where it's already melted, and you can see where it's still dark and powdery. So you'll be able to see it very clearly changing colour as you're going along. And you'll be able to track it along. So just move the tool along the edge, turn it round if you need to, and you'll be able to track it along, which again means that you're not heating up all the fibres in the centre of your card, because the less fibres we heat up from the paper, the nicer and flatter it will stay. Okay, and once we've tracked it all the way round, then we switch it off. We don't want to carry on and on and on. It doesn't go more shiny. Okay, some people think, oh, if I do it a bit more, it'll go shinier and shinier. It doesn't. What happens is it's at its most shiny the moment it melts. So here, look, this is fabulously shiny. Okay, and if you then stay on it and melt it and melt it and melt it, all that happens is you lose some of the glossiness. So it's best to wait till it melts, but then move on straight away. And there we have a nice lovely vintage gilt edge to our card. Okay, so we're now going to do something similar to our greeting. So here we go. I've got my greeting here and my Versamark, and I'm going to ink it up. It doesn't matter which way round you do it. Some people said, oh, have I done it purposefully that way round? No, you can do it either way, up or down. And I'm going to put this just slightly into the middle. Okay, because then I can slice it to the size and shape I want. We're going to dip it into the... And again, we're going to give it a good old flick. And again, you can see I've got a few little pieces left behind, so I'm going to just use my soft brush to get them out of the way. Okay, and I'm going to do it quite carefully here because I don't want to catch the lettering, but I do want to just get those little pieces. Okay. And because this has been used very recently, it should be still nice and hot, so I don't have to heat it up this time. I should be able to go straight in. And here we go. Isn't it wonderful just watching it turning? I have been doing this for many, many years and it still makes me go, oh wow. So there you go. You've now got some beautiful, shiny, wonderful gold lettering. It's quite hard to catch it in the light. There you go. Woohoo! Isn't that fabulous? Right, and I'm going to cut that up. Now, why did I wait until after I'd done it to cut it up? Well, because sometimes it's hard to get it straight. And the great thing about cutting it afterwards is that you can line it up. Let's say you can line it up there along the edge of this metal strip, for example. And I know that because that's been lined up, this edge will now be straight. Once I've got one edge straight, as long as I now go up to there and I cut, that will now be a right angle. So I can now get this one nice and straight too. So how far do we want it? About there. Okay, and it doesn't matter about the end because it's going to be wrapped round. So here we go. I've now been able to do that. Now if I had already cut my strip and then I tried to place it in the middle, it would have been much harder. Okay, So there you go, that's going on there, and all I need to do with that is get a little bit of tear tape on the ends of my greeting. There we go. And I want it to come about there, so I'm going to stick that, bring this round, make sure it's nice and flat and straight, and then curl it round and stick. There we go. And now I've done that, all I now need to do is stick that onto my base card, and I'm going to do that with a little bit of glue. So I'm just going to put some glue around, and the great thing is, because I'm now going over the top of these bits, and in fact I'm just going to add a few little extra pieces, if that tear tape shifts or it's not as successful as it should be, it should stick beautifully forever, but you know, this glue will doubly stick it, so it will also stick it down to the base. So there we go, let's get it centred, and we now have a lovely vintage card. But if you'll notice on the one that's finished, it also has a touch of sparkle. So I'm now going to bring in my lovely champagne. These are absolutely fabulous to go with petal pinks and the pink colours. These are the champagne rhinestones, and I'm just going to take one, let's put it in the middle, and I'm going to put one in the centre of each of the bigger flowers, the big open ones, so that gives us 4 lovely blooms. There we go, and that is today's card. Let's just take it off and show it you. There you go, that's today's card. Come back tomorrow and I will show you how to make the others in the set, and I'll just show you the set quickly. There you go, there's the other 3 that I'm going to show you, one each day. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.